Okay, I think we have enough people to get going. So I will call to order the June 25th, 2024 Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency meeting. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Lair,
Here.
Board Member Walton,
Here.
Board Member Kim,
Here.
Board Member Beatty,
Here.
okay. Board Member Tivnon,
Here.
thank you. Board Member Teeter,
Here.
Board Member Kimmy,
Here.
Board Member Hassan,
Here.
Board Member Hartmeyer Prigg,
Here.
and I'll go ahead and mark Board Member Duggar is present. You said he was a few minutes late.
Yes, okay.
Board Member Ulvin is absent tonight.
Okay, thank you. First on our agenda is visitor comments. Visitor comments allow visitors to speak to the Bureau Board about matters not included on tonight's agenda. Recording Secretary, do we have anyone here to address the Bureau Board this evening?
No.
Okay, thank you. We will move to board communications. Do we have any board members that have information they would like to share with the rest of the board this evening? Okay, seeing no names in the chat, we will move to the consent agenda portion of the agenda. There's one that is the meeting minutes from July 25th, 2023 on the consent agenda tonight, and Bureau Bill 2024-80, extend contract number 3874-22 with Edge Property Management for First Street Dining Commons. Do I have a motion for these consent items?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it has been moved by Director Hassan and seconded by Director Teeter. Are there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, will the recorder please take the vote by roll call?
Board Member Duggar, Board Member Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Hassan,
Yes.
Kimmy,
Yes.
Teeter,
Yes.
Tivnon,
Yes.
Beatty,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Lair.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is our first item of business tonight, or maybe our only item of business, which is our program income discussion. We will receive a presentation from staff and Tiberius Solutions and hold an initial discussion on program income and its role as a tool implementing the Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan. Tyler, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, board members. Tyler Ryerson, staff liaison to Bureau. And tonight we get to have the pleasure of listening to a presentation by our good friend Nick Popnick, Tiberius Solutions, who we've gotten to spend quite a bit of time with Nick here in the last few months. Tonight, we're not talking five-year action plan, but we're talking program income. This is a topic that over the years we kind of touched with a little bit, but we have never had a full discussion to the point of talking about a policy decision. And tonight is kind of the round one of our introduction to this new Bureau Board. Since we haven't really had that good, strong conversation about program income. So I'm going to just turn it over right to Nick. He has a PowerPoint presentation and he'll guide us through the evening. And hopefully as we get to the end of the night, we'll be able to have some direction on our future conversations. Nick, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. And thanks to everyone on Bureau for having me here tonight. I've had the privilege of working with City of Beaverton on tax increment financing ever since the initial Central Beaverton plan was drafted over a decade ago. And I do think that for pretty much that entire time, we've had conversations at the staff level that have occasionally bubbled up to the Bureau Board level about program income, which is not uncommon for other jurisdictions dealing with tax increment financing. But we definitely have heard over the years a desire from the Bureau Board and from staff to be more strategic and programmatic about dealing with program income. And that's what we're hoping to embark on over these next few months here. And tonight, we're not getting into the weeds of anything. We're not presenting a full-fleshed policy. We're not presenting specific policy options for you to consider. We're really just introducing the topic and what will be covered over the coming months when we be coming back to you all for your input, so that by this fall, we can hopefully coalesce around a strategy that you all support and endorse and adopt. So just very briefly, what is program income? It's really easier to define by what it isn't. So any revenue that an urban renewal agency receives that is not tax increment finance revenues, TIF revenues, or is not debt that is secured by a pledge of TIF revenues, anything else counts as program income. And the distinction is because those first two sources, TIF and debt secured by TIF, those both count against your maximum indebtedness, whereas all other sorts of revenues do not. And because of that, when we're accounting for these different revenues, it's really helpful to have a clear, bright line separating them because they are subject to different restrictions. So even though it could be any revenue under the sun, the common examples that we often see for urban renewal areas include land sales, rents, loan repayments to the Bureau. So if you have a program where you're giving out loans to businesses as they pay those loans back, that's program income. For you all specifically with the parking garage and the parking program that you've established in the area, you've got those charges and then fees and fines that also count as program income. One thing not listed on the slide would be grant revenues. Those also count if those grants come specifically to Bureau rather than going into the city's general fund. But if they're coming to the agency, that would again be another type of program income. So what makes program income special? Why is it considered sort of a different tool than tax increment financing? It just isn't subject to those same restrictions as tax increment financing. So I mentioned on the last slide that program income is not subject to maximum indebtedness. Maximum indebtedness sounds like a wonky technical term, but it's actually very impactful for the use of tax increment financing. The state constitution limits the use of tax increment financing to say that it can only be used to pay off debt. And then each plan is required by statute to have this maximum indebtedness limit. And that indebtedness limit is a hard stop. Once you've incurred that amount of debt over the entire life of your tax increment or your urban renewal area, then that's it. You can't incur any more. And if you can't take on any more debt and your tax increment can only be used to pay off debt, once you hit your maximum indebtedness, you've really used up all of your tax increment authority. You can only collect enough to pay off that debt and then cease collecting tax increment in all future years. And so program income is not subject to that, and that means that it does provide you a source of funds that can continue after your tax increment proceeds have gone away. For you in particular, where your plan was approved by voters, and those voters approved the specific use of TIF or use of your maximum indebtedness for project categories, you've locked into the dollar amounts you're able to spend on those categories. And it's possible that as decades move on and priorities shift and change, you might want to spend more in a particular category than you originally got approval from the voters for. Or maybe there's new projects that come up that don't fit into any of those particular categories. Program income is not restricted by those limitations. It's an additional source of funding. It's separate from the maximum indebtedness and separate from what the voters approved. And then geography is a big one as well. The tax increment revenue can only be spent on projects inside of the physical boundary of the urban renewal area. But you may have economic development, not may, you definitely do have economic development and infrastructure needs that extend to the entire city. And your program income can be spent anywhere in the entire city. So it has that geographic flexibility. So there's lots of reasons why it's a more flexible tool than the tax increment revenue. So what does restrict it? Well, it's restricted to the general powers of an urban renewal agency, and those are defined in statute. There's a number of specific examples that are listed, but the most important bullet point from those statutes is here on the slide, that you can engage in any other housing or community development activities that are specifically delegated to it by the governing body. So anything that's related to housing or community and economic development, which includes infrastructure activities, any of that can be done with program income. Some of them, you may need to have the city council take a specific action to say we are delegating the authority to you to carry out this project or this program. But that's a pretty simple step or a easy hoop to jump through. And once you've cleared that hurdle, then there's a wide range of activities and programs that can be funded with your program income. So what will be included in the program income strategy? One thing is that we want to make sure the strategy includes both the potential sources and uses of program income. So we want to look not only at how you could generate this revenue, but also where you want to be spending it. And when it comes to generating program income, we will identify sort of the laundry list of possible options, look at what are the preferred sources for Bureau based on your own set of activities, your own resources, and the other plans and programs that you have out there. And then, what are the parameters on when and how you would actually pursue these? That last point can be, I think, pretty important. It's one thing to say, great, a great source of program income is to sell land that we have to private developers. And then we receive income from that and we can spend it on whatever we want. But there might be plenty of other reasons why you don't want to just sell your land to the highest bidder. Maybe a certain site you want to hold on to for a while because the uses that are being suggested on it don't meet with your goals and your vision for the area, and you'd like to receive a better return on investment in the future. Or maybe there's a local developer that's wanting to put together affordable housing or some type of ground floor retail use that would really energize the community and really fits with your vision. But they're not willing to pay as much as somebody who's going to put in a big box store or mini storage or some facility with minimum wage jobs when you're looking for higher wage jobs. So there's a whole host of reasons why you might not want to just pursue program income as the end all be all of your investments in the area. And so making sure we're considering what sources make the most sense and when and how you actually want to pursue those sources. Then on the expenditure side of things, there are, again, because it's such a flexible tool, there's going to be a lot of ways you could use this revenue. And certainly we want to make sure that the Bureau board has discretion every year in the future to make decisions on how they want to spend those dollars, but providing as much guidance as we can, again, being strategic and thoughtful about where these dollars from certain sources might want to go. So an example of that is, looking at your parking revenues and understanding how important is it for those revenues to first fund the parking program, make sure that gets to be revenue neutral before you start allocating those dollars to other uses. And then it's looking at, well, do we want to carry on the activities we've already identified in our plan, or do we want to broaden things up and look at spending these dollars elsewhere in the community or on different types of projects? So setting some sort of guidelines on how you might choose to spend these dollars in the future. A key point of emphasis here is how this program income policy fits within the other adopted city and Bureau plans and policies that are out there. You touched on this a few bullet points before, but this is not the end all be all of what your urban renewal program is about. There are lots of other outcomes and goals and objectives you're trying to achieve, and we want to make sure that program income fits into all of those adopted plans rather than kind of pushing them aside. And then lastly, some things that may or may not be included in the strategy. We'll sort of understand more once we've got a draft going, but does this need to get into the weeds of different accounting practices? Do we need to have clear performance measures of how well we're doing on generating or spending these dollars? Does there need to be an action plan? Does this policy need multiple steps that are going to take time to implement? And you need a plan to do that? or does the policy speak for itself and can really be adopted on day one? So those things will sort of unfold as this project moves forward. In terms of the process, there isn't really any sort of complicated methodology here. City staff, your finance folks, your economic development folks, your legal folks, all have a lot of great knowledge on where this revenue can be generated, where it can be spent. Your consultant team, I've been doing this sort of work for close to 20 years now for a number of other jurisdictions, and so have great examples from other communities. There's going to just be a lot of conversations that go on, first internally at the staff level, and then coming back out to your advisory committee and to you yourself over the course of the next several months as we come up with an initial policy, have some questions, big questions that we'll need your input on, then refine that policy language over the course of the summer and fall with the plan to bring back final language for you all to consider this October. And you can see that that October date is listed as the 4th meeting that you would have on this topic over the course of this year. So we do plan to get your frequent input on this, as well as the input of URAC as this moves forward, to make sure that we are crafting a policy that really reflects the direction of Bureau and your advisory committee. So for tonight, again, we aren't diving into the weeds. We don't have any draft language to share with you yet. We're really planning to get this underway starting next week with the beginning of the new fiscal year. But we did just want to make sure we were sharing with you all the direction that this project is headed, and then have a couple of broad questions here. So as city staff works with me on this project, you know, what questions, concerns, and ideas about program income would you like to see that are addressed in the strategy? And does that proposed schedule and process look good with the number of meetings we have and the timeline that we're going to take to produce this strategy? So those are the questions we have for you all this evening.
Thank you, Nick. Do any Bureau board members have questions or feedback to answer Nick's questions and kind of guide where this goes? Director Teeter.
Yeah, I've got one to start. As I think about the Bureau program income strategy, I think there are 2 timelines that are coming to my mind that might have different goals for each. One is, well, the first phase, while Bureau is still active, it has not reached its maximum indebtedness. And then the other timeline would be, what do we do with it after that? Does Bureau stick around and just implement program revenue activities, or do we restart a new urban renewal district out with Allen Boulevard in downtown or something? But I think that second phase is a lot less clear for me. But it would be helpful to think through that some more over this coming next 6 months.
Okay. Director Lair.
A couple clarification questions. So you mentioned that loan repayment, Bureau makes the loan, that loan repayment is program income. That just refers to interest on the loan, right? Not the principal?
It is interest and principal both. So let's say you have a revolving loan fund that you start with $1 million of TIF revenue. That $1 million could be invested in one business, they pay it back, you invest it in another, they pay it back. That could go on indefinitely, and it would only count for that initial 1 million against your maximum indebtedness. All of the repayment of that principal and interest is program income that is free to be invested again, spent again, without counting against maximum indebtedness in the future.
Interesting. And I think this goes to Councilor Teeter's question about the different timelines, but is there any rules on the timing of when the income has to be spent relative to when it's received?
Nothing specific to program income. Your attorneys may have other points that I am less clear on about just general municipal government accounting and any requirements to spend those funds. And each individual source of revenue is going to have their own restrictions on it. You know, if you're borrowing and you're earning interest on it, there are issues related to that. But for specific to urban renewal law and statutes, there's no requirement that these dollars need to be spent on any timeline. I will defer to your legal counsel on whether there's other timing concerns that you need to be aware of.
Thank you.
Director Kinney.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, do you have any restrictions on where we could spend the program income?
Yeah, so there is not, because the Urban Renewal Agency represents the entire city, not just the one urban renewal plan boundary that you've adopted. The funds could be spent anywhere in the city. They can only be spent on activities and projects that have been authorized or delegated by the city council. And so if you're spending it on something that is outside of the adopted plan, there needs to be an interim step where city council has to direct you. Let's say you have a program, grants for local businesses for storefront improvements, and you want to use program income to make that available to properties all over the city. As long as city council delegates that authority to the Urban Renewal Agency, you could spend those dollars anywhere. There's no longer a geographic limitation.
So my follow-up with that is that, but then you cannot spend on any city businesses, right?
On any city expenditures or
Yes.
well, like for operations or for, I mean, so you could certainly spend it for capital projects, for
City capital projects.
yeah, you could, building new roads and infrastructure and all of that. The ability to spend it on operations for cities, as long as it's tied to housing or economic and community development, you can do that as well. So, which is why the parking garage, for example, operations of that's ongoing operations, but it's for economic and community development. And so that is a valid use of the program income.
Okay, thank you.
Director Kim.
Yes, I have a few questions. So these program incomes actually comes into Bureau or comes into the city?
Comes into Bureau, yeah. So and for the most part, unless there's a good reason not to, you want it to come into Bureau because it does have a pretty wide authority to spend these dollars on, again, any housing or economic community development activity. You could choose in the future, if the things you were spending the money on were things that the city had authority to do on its own, you could choose to instead have these revenues transfer over to the city. That may be something that you do in the future. We had that question about the two different timelines after the tax increment revenue goes away. If you don't create another tax increment area, then you may just dissolve the Urban Renewal Agency and shift all of these revenue streams over to the city for their responsibilities. The downside of that is that the city has so many other needs. If these revenues all go to the city general fund, there's certainly no guarantee that they would wind up being spent on economic development purposes, because there's so many other things that these dollars might go to. So.
Just to clarify what you just said. So after, just say the agency is not extended after it expires, then it'll go to city general fund. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, if you choose to terminate the agency, so not just the ability of the urban renewal plan to collect tax increment, but if the entire agency shuts down, then all revenues and liabilities of the agency are transferred to the city. And so any of these revenue streams that you have for the urban renewal agency would automatically transfer this to the city at that point in time.
And it goes into general fund, and it could be used for anything,
right?
Not just economic development.
Unless the city specifically chose to do otherwise with it. They could earmark it for a different fund if the city chose to.
Okay. How much money are we talking about? How much income do we have so far? And what's the expected income?
Well, it ebbs and flows, but we're talking about millions of dollars. The parking revenue is significant, is anticipated to become more significant over time. And certainly in the years where you have had real estate transactions, you have had significant increases in program income in those years. When you count grants as part of program income, those are very significant. And it really depends on the policy we put together here about how aggressively you'll be exploring opportunities for program income. So there are communities that I've worked with that have decided to, sort of end grants to the local businesses that they're partnering with and replace it with loans. And in that situation, you have millions of dollars you're investing, and if those millions of dollars all come back with interest over time, it could be a significant portfolio of funds that we're talking about. So it really depends on the choices of how aggressively you wind up pursuing program income, balanced against all the other goals that you're looking to undertake here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Duggar?
Yeah, just a quick question, Nick, and remind me, our TIF funding, so the bonds and things like that, we can use for maintenance of structures, so like the parking garage or
TIF is meant to only be used for capital projects and for administration of the plan overall. When you're establishing a brand new program, like building the garage and getting it up and running, there's arguments that TIF is appropriate to be used there because it's not really an operating expense, it's a startup expense. But if you're looking long-term down the road for operating expenses, those really shouldn't be covered by TIF revenue and should be funded from other sources like program income.
Sure. And that's what I was thinking too. And that's leading into my, one of the things that at the city level that we deal with is, we have a lot of different funds and they're not as healthy as they should be. And so I would strongly encourage us to think about, like, we built this garage, we built the infrastructure, we need to think about the maintenance over the next 20, 30 years. And so we need to build up sufficient funding in the maintenance fund, if you will, to make sure that that parking garage is always in really great shape, that we have money for tenant build outs and things like that. And so in my mind, like, obviously the first bit of time goes to stabilization of the parking program. We've got to get it to revenue neutral. But once that happens, that money still can't be available because we have to build up a fund, build up a really safe fund to fund maintenance. Because I can tell you, I mean, the city councilors know this, the mayor knows, we don't have money at the city to throw into maintenance for things that right now, right? Unless there's additional revenue. So I think we should, the fiscally responsible thing for us to do is at least identify a target for that maintenance fund, and that's where the first bit of money goes once we stabilize it. And then I would support having conversations around, what other investments we can make, but we have to make this fiscally sustainable, in my opinion.
Thank you. Director Tivnon?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So there's a bit of a delay getting off mute. I agree. The maintenance came to mind for me as an easy place to start thinking through how we could make good use of those funds to just protect the long-term viability investments that we're making. I'd also just like to say thank you to Nick Popanek for being so articulate and giving the report that I did not need PowerPoint to follow along. It's a little hard to do this from the road. My initial thoughts on this are that I love that we're providing some shape and definition around it, understanding that we don't have a lot in the way of numbers or charts to help guide our decisions around this, but having some pros and cons baked into keeping it within the established urban renewal area or taking it outside of that, making sure that we're tying in the council goals and priorities really strongly to it, even though those aren't necessarily tied directly to the urban renewal goals and priorities that were crafted so many years ago. So just interested in making sure that we're tapping into both sides and hopefully creating something that's got some synergy between the spirit of both of those different aspects. And on top of that, I had no idea that the revenue was as significant as that, as just getting a sense from all of the different areas in which we could potentially see quite a return, especially on the sale of the properties. That was just in a blind spot for me. So it's good to have that handy as we're thinking through this. So I'd say in the coming conversations, which very excited to have and figure out how to best utilize these funds, just making sure that we're looking at it. I hate to use the word holistically, but looking at it holistically across the entire city, but also with the intent of making sure that we're making good on all of the improvements that we're making in the urban renewal area, and that if these program funds could go towards protecting that investment, that we consider that being one of the main priorities.
Thank you. Mayor Beatty.
Thank you. I definitely agree on the maintenance track here. As we know, the county's also going through something similar where a lot of their buildings are aging out and they're very costly to maintain. We did some built-in buffering around the PRCA when we were originally sketching out that building, understanding it would cost a lot. And here we are just a couple years in and had an ice storm, and it caused significant damage to the building. It was a little unanticipated that all of our insurance isn't picking up. And so I think making sure we have a set aside for those properties is really important. I also think that this conversation was driven largely from the First Street Dining Commons and our desire to do something outside of the box that was a little bit untraditional. And I think funding projects like that that serve as this community gathering space are really important. You know, I travel a lot for this job. What I love about going to cities is seeing those spaces that are really cool. I like to go out for jogs and kind of look at what other cities are doing as far as public art and gathering places and welcoming. And with our budget crunch, we have had to really reduce in areas that made Beaverton really special, like picnics in the park, last Thursday concerts, and these natural gathering places. So thinking about how we can activate areas and use some of this funding that way to drive people back, which puts them into businesses that has a really economic development piece to it. Because Beaverton isn't a place I just want people to come have a meal and go home. We got to really make it that community space. And I was telling some people today that, you know, every night we take our daughters to a different park because there's a bajillion of them in Beaverton, which is really awesome, but we're often the only people in them. So it's not just about having a space, it's about the activation of the space and bringing people to it.
Thank you. Director Kinney.
Yeah, just a quick question. When we sold old Beaverton Bank building, so that income went into the program fund?
Yeah, that is correct. The Beaverton Bank building, which is now Loyal Legion, Bureau purchased that, and the proceeds went back into program income fund. Susan or Debbie would have to give more detail if you want that, Board Member Kenny.
I would just add too that the proceeds were less than the purchase price too. So we just have to think about how we activate the areas to get the uses. As Nick mentioned in his presentation, sometimes it takes a little bit of investment.
Thank you.
Director Kim.
Okay, we're talking about now what we think should be in this document. I think the first thing is to establish a goal, and if you know, I think Bureau's goals of increasing tax base for these areas inside that would not otherwise change. You know, we should probably keep that, as well as just economic development in general. The way I see it, this I think what Mayor talked about creating a sense of activating places and art and things like that. Those are what eventually lead to increase in property values. And I would like to see this fund go to things like that, and help the developer who is gonna get involved with developing some of the properties that we have. When we ask them, as an example, to build a public plaza, developers would probably put in a public plaza that is too small and it's not good for getting it activated. And if we can invest or give them an incentive to build a public plaza or build a higher building or green building that's self-sustaining energy-wise or whatever, that sends a message that these goals are important to the city. I think we can use the developers who are taking the properties that we're putting out for development to have conditions, and for Bureau to use these funds to have them create these kind of things in their development. I also was thinking about the retail spaces in the parking garage. Make sure that this fund is able to invest in that if that space in the long run needs to be able to be a nice place without urban renewal dollars. As an example, bringing in tenants there, maybe for a very, very low rent or almost no rent, if it is important for the city to have that business there, whether it's an incubator or whatever the issue is. So if this fund can be an incentive to them or grant to them for them to operate a business there, I think that's how I see the goal of this fund.
Thank you. Mayor Beatty.
I just wanted to also say that I don't think anyone, not even Roy, was on the Bureau board when we had originally approved what was going to be the office space right outside City Hall before COVID hit. But one of the things that we were going to use this program money for was kind of that maker space alley that we wanted. We wanted to be able to have these spaces that connected the building. It was going to be an arts and innovation district. And there was pieces of that we recognized that the developers weren't going to build. So instead of just having these buildings, we were going to have like picturesque, overlays and places for people to go in these community spaces. And so as we're looking at this document, I do agree that putting this in there, because we own all of this property around City Hall now. And what are we going to do to make sure it's not just a bunch of 5- and 6-story buildings, that it's visually pleasing, walkable, not just ground space retail, but what's happening in between it? What is stopping people to take photos? What's making people want to stay beyond just being at the food cart pod? And so we have to now think about this as this income is coming in.
Thank you. Director Hassan.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. Want to just support what most folks are already saying around making sure we're thinking about maintenance. I liked some of the comments that both Mayor Beatty and Director Kim mentioned about public spaces, and really that developer incentive that Director Kim was talking about in terms of like trying to get folks to think a little bit more strategically around how we can build spaces. Director Kim, I thought of the Bethany Village fountain area. My family's in town and they're like, we have to go spend time there. And it's a place where people want to go because it's activated. It's very similar to the city library fountain that we have. I'm not saying to build that. It came to my mind when you brought it up. So I wanted to just take a moment and elevate that. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you. Are any other directors that haven't had a chance to weigh in? Anyone want to weigh in?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more. I think Councilor Duggar talked about it, but it's interesting that what Nick said about in the future, how this income will go into the city. The way I see it, there's an opportunity here to create a situation where there's going to be income for decades that would feed into city operating funds out of what's happening here. As an example, if we're giving property for a developer to get it developed, and if instead of selling the land, if we do a ground lease, that ground lease payment for the next 99 years will come into Bureau and then eventually to the city operating fund. And if that ground lease is tied to market, it's just gonna go up as the value goes up into the future, into decades. And I don't know how much the parking garage is going to be from, I don't know if it's going to be moneymaker forever, but you know, things like that. So it's like it's a real opportunity, and I think it could be a lot of money for the city operating fund. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe.
Thank you, Director Kim. For me, it's interesting to kind of have this kind of open place, right, to form this policy. And I just heard like such amazing ideas from my other Bureau board members. I think for me too, kind of keeping like the flexibility and the creativity that Bureau has done with those initial investments. And I know that like that was even in a restricted way that the initial investments have been made, but to allow that program income to be able to fund these like just really innovative things and to also help us be responsive, right? I know that because of the way that COVID impacted the office lease market, right? That like that whole plan, Mayor Beatty, that you mentioned, it's you know, not the right plan for now anymore, but to allow us to be like flexible and capitalize in those moments with this funding. So but I love that, like I had no idea there could be this much money coming out of it. And what's amazing is like that it's doing what it's designed to do. But to see this as like a sustainable source of income and revenue for just these opportunities. And, you know, so I think for me, I'm kind of like sky's the limit, but I know that doesn't really help us create a policy, right? But I think that having some flexibility in it is something that I would look for, because like I just heard such a diversity of ideas, and I wouldn't want something to not be possible if our policy was like maybe too like narrowly focused. I didn't really hear, Director Walton, I will catch you in just a second. I didn't really hear from anyone about the timeline. So if we could just get like head nods if you're comfortable with the timeline that Nick posted. Okay, or shared. Okay, great. All right, Director Walton, please go.
Yeah, thanks for all the thoughts. And I think sort of what Director Kim was saying, I think really resonated with me. And one of the things that I think about is like, how can this be like a criteria for us in decisions going forward? So how do we think about like the program income as a part of, you know, when we're making decisions around investments as sort of a critical part of that, given that this could be like a long-term financial stabilizer for the city. So anyway, just again, that's not necessarily per this policy, but just for us to all think about is when we're weighing decisions with Bureau funds, just in general, thinking about how we could optimize or maximize the income piece of it going forward. So that's it.
Thank you. Okay, I think that is all the comments. Nick and Tyler, is there anything else you would like to hear from the board on?
That was fantastic input, and I really appreciate everybody's comments tonight. And I'm really excited to work with Tyler and the rest of the folks of the city to come back with our first draft, which will have some more pointed questions for you to all weigh in on this summer.
Yeah, no, and I'd just like to thank Nick again for popping in tonight, putting this together. Thank you, board members. It's always, I don't know, this is the kind of the nights that I love, is being able to just kind of a free spin of your thoughts and being able to grasp a kind of a difficult subject, but recognizing that there is positive outcomes at the back end of this. And we want to work hard in the next few months to get to a policy so we can be moving forward. So thank you on that.
Awesome. Okay, so our next agenda item is the executive director's report. Dan, actually, are we moving to Andy? My Script says Dan, but Andy, do I get to hand it to you?
Yes.
All
I
right.
have that distinct pleasure. Dan is at LOC or OCC City Managers Conference in Hood River, and is having poor Wi-Fi issues at a hotel that I won't name. Just to be clear there. So I'll take over. Good to see everyone again. My first Bureau meeting, I guess, in this capacity. The other one was sort of a formality when you all passed a budget, although a budget is never a formality, but that was a really quick meeting. So it was good to hear the conversation and the discussion tonight, and to actually be sort of almost on the ground floor of something happening in Beaverton. So I'm playing catch up on basically everything else. So I look forward to being part of the discussions moving forward. That was good. I think Nick jumped off, but appreciate him and Tyler and Janine putting all that together. I guess a few things to really just touch base on, everyone's familiar with. One of those would be the Lombard West, and that took up several minutes of time through one-on-ones with everyone the last several weeks. So we'll be working on that over the summer using a Metro grant in preparation for the release of the solicitation later this late summer or early fall. We're pretty excited about this one. The more and more I learn about this property and the potential for more transit-oriented development, and what that would mean for downtown Beaverton, that's really exciting, and it's a highly anticipated opportunity for one of the key assets for Bureau, and that's one that we'll definitely be reporting back on. Tyler put this one together for me, but the building improvement program, I imagine this program had some feedback from the finance department, but to aid in some of the capacity and the budget needs starting this next fiscal year, July 1. The application timeline will be updated. Currently, this fiscal year and all previous fiscal years, applications were received on a rolling basis year round. Starting July 1 in the next fiscal year, the applications, only those related to new businesses and emergency maintenance grants, will be accepted at any time on a rolling basis. All the other applications will revert to being accepted in the fall and spring application periods. And additionally, I think to help aid with some of the year-end fiscal year reconciliation activities, we won't receive applications between May 15th and the end of June. So fall and spring application periods for the building improvement program, unless it's a new business or emergency situation. The Bureau area update spreadsheet is in the executive director portion of tonight's agenda. You can view that. If there are any questions there, please let Tyler know, because there's a lot that I don't know just yet, and I'm really looking forward to digging in and learning all about these myself. As you know, there's a summer break coming up for council and the Bureau, and our next meeting is scheduled for August 27th, and it seems that City Council is also looking at meeting that same night. So I think, Tyler, maybe this is where you could take over. You're hoping to get some feedback from Bureau board members, potentially to meet between 5:30 and 7:30 that evening, August 27th.
Yeah, I believe council has already been contacted about the particular date and time. But the 4 Bureau appointees, we're looking at a start time of 5:30 and trying to end by 7 o'clock. So council can meet at 7 o'clock that evening. So I'm just looking for kind of a thumbs up from Eric, Sarah, and Roy on August 27th, starting at 5:30. Okay. I think that is enough for the city. Roy's probably going to be on vacation, right? Duly noted. So appreciate that for the city recorder.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Thank you, everyone. I believe that is it for the brief report tonight.
Thank you. In the report, since one of the topics you covered was the building improvement program, and it mentions Hapa Pizza and a new project from them, New York Times put out their best pizza list today or in the last couple days, like in the country, and Hapa Pizza is in the list. So that is pretty darn exciting. So if you haven't been, please go. It's amazing, amazing pizza. But also that's just so exciting to see, like, just, like we talk a lot with this group about catalytic change and like how cool, right? Like the catalyst of this, like to have a Beaverton business like make it into the New York Times as one of the best pizza places in the country. It's just so cool. So I just had to call that out. Director Teeter.
Thanks. My comment is also about the building improvement program. There's a note here that says that Masonic Lodge is updating the event space. Can somebody tell us more about what that project is looking like?
Yeah, I'd have to get to Megan to get back to you, Counselor. We can put that into maybe a CLI or some kind of communication. I'll have to check with Megan on that.
Okay, thanks.
And that's Megan Bronston for everyone's sake.
Thank you. Director Duggar.
Yeah, just a quick question. Some of the businesses I've talked to east of, what is that? East of Hall on Broadway. So that's where the big apartment buildings under construction are struggling with parking because of all the construction folks that are parking on street in various areas over there. Like the businesses have told me, two of them now have told me that there's basically no parking, and they had asked me, and I said I would bring it to the Bureau board, bring it to the city so we have the empty lot there. Like if we could consider like a short-term parking in the empty lot, or some sort of solution to help them out while the construction is commencing. I don't know if I don't think it's necessarily something we need to discuss tonight, but it is. Now the second business has mentioned it, they are really struggling over there. And I know that's a unique street, it's a unique area. And it's just something I think we need to think about.
I know staff have already been working on this, and so Tyler probably knows, but I know that they were already working on this, and they helped the construction company secure parking in another lot. So perhaps this is an enforcement issue versus a finding a space to park issue.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up and take a look at what the latest is. I had not heard anything here recently, so thank you, Counselor, for.
Yeah, this was this past Saturday. No, this past Friday. So if you could just reach out to a couple of those businesses, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Andy or Tyler? Okay, well, seeing no further questions, we are adjourned for the night. So thank you all for your participation, and we will see you next time.